shapes, sounds, and most exciting of all, life. Everyone can conduct this power. Everyone has an imp. Imps are the key to the power of the Dreamiverse. The Dreamiverse teems with their energy, waiting for you to choose your very own. Which one is yours? Yes! That one belongs to you. Now to see what your imp can do. Press and hold the Options button, and your imp will snap to the center of the screen. Yes! Great! Your imp responds to the smallest movements of your wireless controller. That's because it's attached to the controller's motion sensor. You only need to move the controller a teeny tiny amount to get your imp to respond. Go on, move your imp around a bit. Think of the light bar on the front of the controller as a flashlight beam conducting your imp. You see that little cluster of creativity? Move the pointy part of your imp to touch it. That's it. Now, collect those two clusters at the top and bottom. See how that feels. Yes, magnificent. You can also nudge the imp against the edge of the screen to recalibrate it. Anytime your imp gets unruly, press and hold the Options button to recenter it. Now, let's play with the Dreamiverse. See if you can catch all those dancing shapes. Unleash those colors and sounds. Very good. You're a natural. Wow, it's a symphony. See how your imp can affect everything it touches, wandering, soaring and leaping, playing through the wilds of your imagination. You're amazing. You're wonderful. You're a dream surfer. You're... Oh no. You found the wall of doubt. Don't worry, everyone doubts themselves in the beginning. See that loose break? Try using the pointy tip of your imp to grab hold of it. That's it. Pull that wall down. Look at that brick. Who does it think it is? Get rid of it! Your idea's getting away. Chase it down. It should be in here somewhere. Oh, more barriers. Cast them aside. There it is. Come on, keep up. Dark. The only source of energy is you. What can you do?
One, two, three. Dream.
Ah! We have light! A good start. If only we had a way of exploring this place. Now we're really getting somewhere. There must be some way to get up there. Great work. We're so close. Ah, look at that seedling. The Dreamiverse loves to help things grow. That's it. Amazing what a little nurturing can do. Almost there. We're here at last. Dreams, your vast, vibrant, sublime universe of possibilities. Let's start dreaming. Ah, this is your very own home space. You'll always start dreaming from here. As you can see, my little cone friend is happy to help you wander around. Press R2 to possess it. You got a prize bubble. Well done. There's a lot more around. They've got all sorts of useful goodies in them. See if you can find a few. Excellent finds. Now for the entrance to the Dreamiverse. The circle button to get you. So much to see. Decisions, decisions. Choose dream surfing to experience other dreamers' creations, or pop into dream shaping to make something of your own. Ah, dream surfing. Here we can explore the wilds of the Dreamiverse, slipping and sliding through the strangest and most wonderful ideas and creations. Lose yourself in the kaleidoscope of games, animations, music videos, and all sorts of worlds and experiences made by dreamers just like you. Dream surfing is a never-ending, ever-changing stream of dreamers' imaginations. Let's try it out.
shot his wife as she was cleaning up the kitchen after lunch. When his 10-year-old son came to investigate the commotion, the father shot him too. His 6-year-old daughter had the good sense to hide in the bathroom, but reports suggest he lured her out by telling her it was just a game. The girl was found shot once in the chest from point-blank range. The mother, who he shot in the stomach, used in the crime at his local gun store 2 days earlier. This brutal killing took place while the family was gathered at home on a Sunday afternoon.
Don't touch that dial now, we're just getting started.
Retrieved the rifle and shot his wife as she was cleaning up the kitchen after lunch. When his 10-year-old son came to investigate the commotion, the father shot him too. His 6-year-old daughter had the good sense to hide in the bathroom, but reports suggest he lured her out by telling her it was just a game. The girl was found shot once in the chest from point-blank range. The mother, who he shot in the stomach, was pregnant at the time. Police arriving on scene after neighbors called 911 found the father in his car listening to the radio. Several days before the murders, neighbors say they heard the father repeating a sequence of numbers in a loud voice. They said it was like he was chanting some strange spell. There was another family shot to death in the same state last month, and in December last year, a man used a rifle and meat cleaver to murder his entire family. In each case, the perpetrators were fathers. State police say this string of domestic homicides appears unrelated, though it could be part of a large... gathered at home.
By your own hand. It's not too late if you act fast.
Wife as she was cleaning up the kitchen after lunch. When his 10-year-old son came to investigate the commotion, the father shot him too. His 6-year-old daughter had the good sense to hide in the bathroom, but reports suggest he lured her out by telling her it was just a game. The girl was found shot once in the chest from point-blank range. The mother, who he shot in the stomach, was pregnant at the time. Police arriving on scene after neighbors called 911 found the father in his car. There was another family shot to death in the same state last month, and in December last year, a man used a rifle and meat cleaver to murder his entire family. In each case, the perpetrators were fathers. The father purchased the rifle used in the crime at his local gun store 2 days earlier. This brutal killing took place while the family was gathered at home. The crime, the father went to the trunk of his car, retrieved the rifle, and shot his wife as she was cleaning up the kitchen after lunch. The father shot him too. His 6-year-old daughter had the good sense to hide in the bathroom, but reports suggest he lured her out by telling her 2 days earlier. This brutal killing took place while the family was gathered at home on a Sunday afternoon. The day of the crime, the father went to the trunk of his car, retrieved the rifle, and shot his wife as she was cleaning up the kitchen after lunch. When his 10-year-old son...
Look behind you. I said, look behind you. Okay, listen up, and don't you move. Need to take a piss? Hold it. The show's got just 60 seconds to go. I got a message for all you folks out there in Radio Land. So sit tight and bend an ear. Now's the time for action. Our society is rotten to the core. I'm talking to all the fine, upstanding folks got their welfare cut, got their jobs pulled out from under us. Yeah, you know what to do. Now's the time. Do it.
Killing took place while the family was gathered at home on a Sunday afternoon. The day of the crime, the father went to the trunk of his car, retrieved the rifle, and shot his wife as she was cleaning up the kitchen after lunch. When his 10-year-old son came to investigate the commotion, the father shot him too. His 6-year-old daughter had the good sense to hide in the bathroom, but reports suggest he lured her out by telling her it was just a game. The girl was found shot once in the chest from point-blank range. The mother, who he shot in the stomach, was pregnant at the time. Police arriving on scene after neighbors called 911 found the father in his car listening to the radio. Several days before the murders, neighbors say they heard the father repeating a sequence of numbers in a loud voice. They said it was like he was chanting some strange spell. There was another family shot to death in the same state last month, and in December last year, a man used a rifle and meat cleaver to murder his entire family. In each case, the perpetrators were fathers. State police say this string of domestic homicides appears unrelated, though it could be part of a larger trend such as employment, child care, and other social issues facing the average family. Earlier. This brutal killing took place while the family was gathered at home on a Sunday afternoon. The day of the crime, the father went to the trunk of his car, retrieved the rifle, and shot his wife as she was cleaning up the kitchen after lunch. When his 10-year-old son came to investigate the commotion, the father shot him too. His 6-year-old daughter had the good sense to hide in the bathroom, but reports suggest he lured her out by telling her it was just a game. The girl was found shot once in the chest from point-blank range. The mother, who he shot in the stomach, was pregnant at the time. Police arriving on scene after neighbors called 911 found the father in his car listening to the radio. Several days before the murders, neighbors say they heard the father repeating a secret. Shot his wife as she was cleaning up the kitchen after lunch. When his 10-year-old son came to investigate the commotion, the father shot him too. His 6-year-old daughter had the good sense to hide in the bathroom, but reports suggest he lured her out by telling her it was just a game. The girl was found shot once in the chest from point-blank range. The mother, who he shot in the stomach, was pregnant at the time. Police arriving on scene after neighbors called 911 found the father in his car listening to the radio. Several days before the murders, neighbors say they heard the father repeating a sequence of numbers in a loud voice. They said it was like he was chanting some strange spell. There was another family shot to death in the same state last month, and in December last year, a man used a rifle and meat cleaver to murder his entire family. In each case, the perpetrators were fathers. State police say this string of domestic homicides appears unrelated, though it could be part of a... murder of a wife and her 2 children by their husband and father. The father purchased the rifle used in the crime at his local gun store 2 days earlier. This brutal killing took place while the family was gathered at home on Sunday afternoon. The day of the crime, the father went to the trunk of his car, retrieved the rifle, and shot his wife as she was cleaning up the kitchen after lunch. When his 10-year-old son came to investigate the commotion, the father shot him too. His 6-year-old daughter had the good sense to hide in the bathroom, but reports suggest he lured her out by telling her it was just a game. The girl was found shot once in the chest from point-blank range. The mother, who he shot in the stomach, was pregnant at the time. Police arriving on scene after neighbors called 911 found the father in his car listening to the radio. Several days before the murders, neighbors say they heard the father repeating a sequence of numbers in a loud voice. When pregnant at the time. Police arriving on scene after neighbors called 911 found the father in his car listening to the radio. Several days before the murders, neighbors say they heard the father repeating a sequence of numbers in a loud voice. They said it was like he was chanting some strange spell. There was another family shot to death in the same state last month, and in December last year, a man used a rifle and meat cleaver to murder his entire family. In each case, the perpetrators were fathers. State police say this string of domestic homicides appears unrelated, though it could be part of a larger trend such as employment, child care, and other social issues facing the average family. As the congressional debate over gun control flares up yet again, we regret to report the murder of a wife and her 2 children by their husband and father. The father purchased the rifle used in the crime at his local gun store 2 days earlier. This brutal killing took place while the family was gathered at home on a Sunday afternoon. The day of the crime, the father went to the trunk of his car, retrieved the rifle, and shot his wife as she was cleaning up the kitchen after lunch. When his 10-year-old son came to investigate the commotion, the father shot him too. His 6-year-old daughter had the good sense to hide in the bathroom, but reports suggest he lured her out by telling her it was just a game. The girl was found shot once in the chest from point-blank range. The mother, who he shot in the stomach, was pregnant at the time. Police arriving on scene after neighbors called 911 found the father in his car listening to the radio. Several days before the murders, neighbors say they heard the father repeating a sequence of numbers in a loud.
You've been chosen. Dad was such a drag. Every day he'd eat the same kind of food, dress the same, sit in front of the same kind of games. Yeah, he was just that kind of guy. But then one day he goes and kills us all. He couldn't even be original about the way he did it. I'm not complaining. I was dying of boredom anyway. But guess what? I will be coming back, and I'm bringing my new toys with me.
You have the power to manifest anything you can imagine. Anything. Music, a story, a piece of art, a whole game, even something there isn't a word for yet. Create things from scratch using the dream tools. Or you can use them to remix something another dreamer has made. For now, I'll take you to the Dreams Workshop, where my friend, the Dreams Architect, will introduce you to the secrets of creation. Go on in. He won't bite. Promise. So you want to learn the ropes of dream shaping, but you don't know where the tools are on the shelf, or how to use that intriguing gadget, or you want to know what that strange contraption over there does. Architect, assist us. Ah, hello, Architect.
Hello, Queenie. Why am I a squirrel?
Just a temporary physical form for you. I like it. It's cute.
Well, thank you. It's better than the last one.
Now, show this dream shaper how to unleash their creative powers.
Done! Follow me, Dreamer. Oh, it's so exciting that you're here. I have been really looking forward to this. There is so much to show you. Gameplay, animation, art. There's no limit to what's possible. This is the Dreams Workshop. Which controller do you have? I hope you've got your imp under control. I've got some spectacular tricks to show you, and some that are just all right. Make sure you follow the steps carefully if you want to get the most out of this tutorial. It's not just about getting to the end, it's the journey that counts. Shortly, you'll be in edit mode, creating and editing your own scenes. First, I'm going to show you how to move around a scene. Welcome to edit mode. You can see that we're in edit mode because the assembly mode icon is in the top left of the screen. If you ever need to remind yourself of the controls, select that icon with the X button. And select it again to hide the controls. You can also see the assembly menu at the top of the screen. That's where you'll find all the tools and modes you need to construct your scenes. The assembly menu is opened and closed by pressing the square button. You won't need it just yet, so go ahead and close it with square. First, I'm going to show you how to move around in edit mode, as it's a bit different from play mode. To give you something to do, I've hidden a puppet somewhere in this scene, which we'll need in later tutorials. I've left some clues to help you find it. Before we search for the first clue, let's start by looking around. In front of you, you can see a floating island with some shapes on it. If you move the right stick to the left and right, you can look around the scene. Is there an orange cone around here? You found it. There's a blue cube around here somewhere too. See if you can find that. Now try looking up with the right stick to find the pink pyramid. That's the one. Okay, let's turn back towards the shapes floating on the island. My first clue is hidden somewhere on this island. Move around the island using the left stick. Push it left and right to move sideways, and up and down to move forwards and backwards. Remember, left stick to move, right stick to look around. Easy! If your imp ever feels off center, hold the options button to recenter it. Can you find anything here that looks like a clue? Once you've found the clue, you're ready to move on to the next step. If you want to re-watch this step, you can. Hover your imp over the buttons on the video to see what they do. Use the skip buttons to move between tutorial steps. Or just rewind 10 seconds if you miss something. If the video gets in your way, grab and move it with your imp using R2. You can minimize the video and play along with audio only. Or you can maximize it to watch in instructions view if you prefer. In instructions view, you can see more information about the steps. Once the current step is finished, press the arrow button to move on to the next one. Did you find that clue? It was on the back of one of those shapes. Looks a bit like a rocket. I do love a cryptic message. Why don't you look around with the right stick for any rocket-related goings-on? Ah, look over there. On that island in the distance. Those shapes look a lot like the ones in the clue. Go on, fly over there and check it out. Remember, push up on the left stick to move forward and use the right stick to change direction. And don't forget, you can recalibrate your imp by holding the options button. Once you reach the island, make sure... Think back to the first clue. The cone was on top of the cylinder, right? But how can you move them? Well, in edit mode, you interact with everything using your imp, the very tip of your imp's pointy part. See how there's an icon in a circle? Now, that looks pretty good, at least from this angle. Creating scenes in three-dimensional space means that you should always look at your creations from different angles. The easiest way to do that is with the grab cam. Instead of moving the objects you grab cam moves your point of view around them. Try it out on the cone. Hover over it, then press and hold R1. Pushing the left and right sticks moves your point of view around the cone. Easy! Now that you can get a proper look at it, check that the cone is on straight. Unlike mine. Let go of R1 to stop using the grab cam. And use R2 to make any adjustments you need. Here's a little secret called nudge. If you don't press R2 all the way down, but just hold it lightly, you can move the cone slowly, giving you finer control. Once you're happy the cone is straight, you can move on to the next step. Hey, look at that. Another clue. It's a molecule. I know because I put it there. Just play along with me. Why don't you look around with the right stick and see if you can find another molecule? There's one, over there by that island. You're hot on the trail. It'll take forever to get there using the left stick. Luckily you can use the grab cam to get there faster. Give it a try now. Hover your imp over that orange cube in the distance. Hold R1 to grab it with the grab cam. Then gently push up on the left stick to zoom right over. Just keep holding R1 until you've made it all the way to the island. See? Told you it was quicker. But there's an even faster way to zip around scenes. It's just like the grab cam, but you'll also need to hold L1. You see, L1 is a very special button. You know the way that on a computer keyboard, holding down Shift changes what some keys do? Well, in Dreams, holding down L1 changes what the other buttons do. Maybe it's best if I show you. You see that rocket you built earlier? Hover your imp over it. Now hold L1 and then press R1, the grab cam button. You don't have to hold it or use the stick this time. Whoa! Fast, huh? Try it out again on the return journey. Hover your imp over the orange cube and hold L1. Then press R1 to zoom right on over. Now that you know how to move around quickly, see if you can find the next clue somewhere on this island. Hey, look at that. Did you find the last clue? It was on the back of the orange cube. What on earth could it mean? If I had eyes, I would wink at you right now. I can't see any other green trash cans around. Unless... Of course, the trash can is the icon for the delete tool. I'm so devious. That must mean you need to delete the orange cube. You can delete anything in edit mode using the triangle button. Just hover your imp over the cube, then press triangle. And it's gone. These tools are powerful. Delete the orange sphere next. If you change your mind or delete the wrong thing, you can press undo, which is the left directional button. And if you want to redo, just press the right directional button. You can undo and redo pretty much anything, not just deletions. Oh look, there was a clue hidden in the cube. An arrow. Perhaps there's another one like it nearby. Look around. That was my final clue telling you where to go. The island right above us. I know you're an expert in moving around with the left and right stick now, but I've got one more technique to show you. Remember that holding L1 changes what the grab cam does. It can also change what the left stick does. Normally it moves you backwards and forwards in the direction you're facing. But if you hold L1 at the same time, the left stick will make you move up and down instead. Try getting up to the last island that way. Position yourself so you're looking at the orange arrow which is pointing up. Now hold L1 and push up on the left stick. We have liftoff! Right, here's the puppet I reserved for you. Let's call her Connie, 'cause she looks like a cone. We need to help Connie walk through the door to complete this tutorial. To do that, we're gonna have to switch over to play mode. Remember, right now you're in edit mode. This is where you create and edit your scenes. In play mode, you can experience the scene just like a player would if they found it in the Dreamiverse. You can't make any changes in play mode, but you can take control of characters and try out what you've made. Switch over to play mode now. Just press the options button on your controller. Hover over the controller icon with your imp, then press X to select it. To control a puppet in a scene, you first need to possess it with R2. Try that now. She's full of beans, isn't she? I picked her just for you. Walk her around a bit, then take her through the door to finish this tutorial. Oh, looks like the door's too high.
Want to carry on with the fundamentals? You can also press the circle button to see other topics.
Connie's hosting a talent contest to find the best characters in the Dreamiverse. but she's a no-nonsense judge, and none of these candidates are up to scratch. Of course, Cuthbert's no use, so let's see if we can come up with something to impress her. Head into the dressing room, also known as edit mode, to get started. In this tutorial, we'll be customizing the appearance of a puppet. So we'll need a blank canvas to start. Go to the Assembly menu and open the Gadgets menu. Now open the Gameplay Gear menu. In here, find the Blank Puppet Deluxe. The Deluxe version is the perfect starting point for making characters. Select it with X and a blue mannequin will appear on your imp. It has built-in features like jump and possession animations, which the basic version doesn't have. Connie won't be impressed by a basic puppet, so make sure you select the right one. Stamp the deluxe puppet in the scene with R2 or X. Get its feet roughly on the floor, but make sure they aren't intersecting with it. Then press the circle button to unequip the puppet from your imp. If you need to, you can grab and adjust the puppet with R2. In the next step, we'll start exploring the puppet's inner workings. The puppet might look simple, but it's quite a complex gadget. So let's get to know it a little better. It's made up of many objects that have been grouped together. And just like any other group, it can be scoped into. Hover over the puppet with your imp, press and hold L1, and then press X to scope in. Below the puppet, you will now see its base and its logic microchip. If they're obscured by the floor, you may need to scope out and adjust your puppet's position. The puppet's body is made of sculptures, joined together with connectors. When scoped in, we can grab parts of the puppet to change its pose. Before we do that, find the button called Puppet Mirror in the context menu. Select this button with X, and your puppet will stay symmetrical. When you pose it. Of course, you don't have to make it symmetrical, but it's a good way to start. You can always add nuance later. When you move a part of the puppet, all the parts connected to it will also move. The root of the puppet is the pelvis, and every other part is connected in a hierarchy from there. For example, moving the upper arm will move the lower arm and the hand as well. But if you move the pelvis, the whole puppet will move. Its feet will try to stay in contact with the floor. So if you lower the pelvis, the puppet's knees will bend. You can also rotate parts by grabbing them with L2. Use R2 and L2 to create a new pose for the puppet. Changing the pose can be a great starting point for a character. The pose could be confident, sad, scared, or aggressive. Don't forget, you can undo any changes with the left directional button if you make a mistake. Use the grab cam to adjust your pose from different angles. Just hold R1 over the puppet to activate it. When you've finished posing your puppet, move on to the next step. Now we've posed our puppet, we can start adjusting its proportions. To do that, we're going to use the stretch tool. Go to the Assembly menu, then open the Tools menu. Select the stretch tool. It's the one that looks like a double-ended arrow. The stretch tool works like the move tool in a lot of ways. But with the stretch tool, you can move parts of the puppet beyond the limits of the connectors. Try grabbing and moving the puppet's head. Notice the way the neck elongates and shortens. Now try it on the hands. This changes the length of the upper and lower arm. Some body parts respond differently to the stretch tool. For instance, if you move the upper arms, The shoulders will broaden and the chest will expand. You can also scale parts of the puppet using the up and down directional buttons. I'd only recommend doing this to the puppet's extremities though, the head, hands and feet. Puppets are delicate contraptions, and extreme scaling and stretching can make them behave unexpectedly. But if anything does go skew-whiff, just undo it using the left directional button. If you know how to use sculpt mode, you could try scoping into the individual body parts to change their shape. You can find a whole tutorial on sculpting in the art tutorials. Have a play around with stretching and scaling and see what you can create. Try making the puppet more cartoony or turn it into a monster. Test out your puppet in play mode to see it in motion. When you're done, return to edit mode. Rewind time with L3 to get your puppet back in position. In the next step, I'll show you how to color and stylize your puppet. Another way of customizing your puppet's appearance is by changing its color. We can do this by tinting it in coat mode. If you've played my tutorial on coat, style and effects, you'll already know how to do this. In the assembly menu, go to the modes menu and enter coat mode. In the coat mode menu, open the colors menu and select a color for your puppet. Now hover over your puppet and hold R2 to tint it with your selected color. The longer you hold R2, the stronger the tint will become. Another way of customizing your puppet's appearance. Now we've posed our puppet that looks like a double-ended stretch tool. You can also scale parts of the puppet using the up and down directional buttons. I'd only recommend doing this to the puppet's extremities though, the head, hands and feet. Puppets are delicate contraptions, and extreme scaling and stretching can make them behave unexpectedly. But if anything does go skew-whiff, just undo it using the left directional button. If you know how to use sculpt mode, you could try scoping into the individual body parts to change their shape. You can find a whole tutorial on sculpting in the art tutorials. Have a play around with stretching and scaling and see what you can create. Try making the puppet more cartoony or turn it into a monster. Test out your puppet in play mode. Another way of customizing your puppet's appearance is by changing its color. We can do this by tinting it in coat mode. If you've played my tutorial on coat, style and effects, you'll already know how to do this. In the assembly menu, go to the modes menu and enter Coat Mode. In the Coat Mode menu, open the Colors menu and select a color for your puppet. Now hover over your puppet and hold R2 to tint it with your selected color. The longer you hold R2, the stronger the tint will become. If you want your puppet to be multicolored, simply scope into the puppet. Select a different color from the Colors menu. Hover your imp over a part of the puppet you want to tint. How about the head? Now, when you press and hold R2, just that part of the puppet will be tinted. You can also use the tools in Style Mode and Effects Mode. Try using Style Mode to change the texture of your puppet. If you don't know how to use Style Mode, there's an art tutorial which can help you. In the next step, we'll dive into the dressing up box. One of the simplest ways to customize a puppet is by adding accessories. But to make sure they move with the puppet, we need to group them with a body part. Before we do that, it's important to fully understand the concept of scoping in and out of groups and objects. If you've played part 4 of the Start Dreaming tutorials, then you'll already know a thing or two about using groups. Objects in dreams are often combined into groups, which can be treated like a single object in assembly mode. Groups themselves can also be grouped. This means that you can have groups nested inside other groups. Let's try scoping in and out of something else before we invade the puppet's personal space. Over there on the floor is a hat box. Make sure you're in edit mode. Now try taking the lid off the hat box. The whole box will move because the lid, the box, and its contents have been grouped. Undo the move with the left directional button to put it back in its place. Now scope into the group. Hover over the hat button. Over there on the floor is a hat box. Make sure you're in edit mode. Now try taking the lid off the hat box. The whole box will move because the lid, the box, and its contents have been grouped. Undo the move with the left directional button to put it back in its place. Now scope into the group. Hover over the hat box, press and hold L1 and press X. Everything but the box should go grey and blurry. If not, make sure your visual feedback preference is set to all. This shows that you've scoped into the group and can edit its contents. Now, you should be able to take the lid off the hat box. Inside is another hat box. Try taking the lid off this one. I think you can guess what will happen. This smaller hat box is also grouped with its lid and contents. Remove the smaller box and place it next to the large one. Now scope into this group by holding L1 and pressing X over the smaller hat box. The original hat box will go grey and blurry as we've scoped into a subgroup. Now you should be able to open the smaller hat box. What's inside? A lovely hat. Take it out and place it next to the smaller box. When you've done that, proceed to the next step. Now that we've taken the hat out of the box, let's try putting it on our puppet. First, we need to scope out of this group. To do that, simply hold L1 and press circle. That takes us back into the large hat box group. Now scope out again into the main scene by holding L1 and pressing circle. Pick up the hat. We seem to have a bit of a problem here. The hat is still inside the nested groups, even though it's outside the hat box. When you scope in and out, only you and your imp are moving in and out of objects or groups. Unless you're carrying something with you. Scope back into the large hat box group, and then into the smaller hat box group to get the hat. Now grab and hold the hat with R2, and scope out of both groups with L1 and circle while holding the hat. If you've done it correctly, you should be back in the main scene. With a hat you can now move independently of the boxes. That's because scoping in and out of a group whilst holding an object adds or removes it from that group. Hurrah! Now we can put it on the puppet. Grab the hat, hover over the puppet, then hold L1 and press X to scope into the puppet with the hat. Now scope into the puppet's head while still holding the hat. This is a shortcut for grouping two objects if you're already grabbing one of them. Simply grab an object and scope into another object to group them automatically without having to select them. The same way that scoping into a group while holding an object adds it to the group. Now that it's in a group with the head, place the hat where you want it. Remember to check it from different angles using the grab cam to make sure it's in position. Press R2 softly to nudge if you need to make fine adjustments to the position of the hat. Before you move on, you should try out the puppet to see it walk around with its new accessory. Switch to play mode, possess it with R2, and take it for a wander. Nice. When you're ready to continue, go back to edit mode. Going to play mode and back to edit mode will scope you out of any groups. Remember to rewind time with L3 to get your puppet back in position. Then go to the next step. Okay, let's add some more accessories before our puppet's stage debut. Open the assembly menu and select Search, the button with the magnifying glass, to search for an element. Usually, you'd be in the Dreamiverse here, but for this tutorial, I've kept things simple and curated a collection of elements for you to use. Take a look at some of the accessories in the collection. Select one you like with X. You'll now have your chosen accessory on your imp. Don't stamp it down yet though. First we need to scope into the puppet. You can do this even when you have an element from the Dreamiverse on your imp. Scope in with L1 and X, and then scope into the body part that you want to attach it to. If that body part is already in its own group, you'll enter that group. But if the body part is just a sculpture, then you'll create a new group when you stamp the object down. Once the accessory is in the group, you can adjust the accessory while you're there. Try adding some more accessories from the collection. Then it's important to test the puppet in play mode, to check that the accessory is attached correctly. Here's another very important tip. If you ever want to remove an accessory, whatever you do, don't ungroup the body part. If you do that, you'll delete that group's connection to the puppet. And without the connector, your puppet's limbs will start falling off when you go into play mode. And nobody wants that. Instead, scope into the group containing the body part and the accessory. Then either delete the accessory or grab it and scope out. If there's only one object left in the group, it'll automatically ungroup, and the connector will remain safely connected to the remaining object. Play around with the things you've learned in this tutorial and have fun making a character. When you're happy, select the star podium from the tutorial collection and stamp it down in the outline that we've put in the scene for you. Then head back into play mode, jump onto the podium and see what Connie thinks of your creation. Then head back to the remaining object. Play around with the things you've learned in this tutorial and have fun making a character. When you're happy, select the star podium from the tutorial collection and stamp it down in the outline that we've put in the scene for you. Then head back into play mode, jump onto the podium and see what Connie thinks of your creation. Oh dear, it looks like Cuthbert is really stuck this time. In previous tutorials, you've edited the scene to help Connie reach Cuthbert. But this time, you'll be editing Connie herself, supercharging her with some new abilities to get past the obstacles in the scene. Bear in mind that this is a complex tutorial in which it's easy to make a mistake. If you do, remember to use the left directional button to undo. Now go into play mode and see how far you can get. Possess Connie with R2 and press the X button to jump. Oops, she can't even get over the first obstacle. So let's start by souping up her jump height. Switch back to edit mode and we'll get started. To change Connie's jump height, all we need to do is tweak her. So hover over her, hold L1 and press the square button to open her tweak menu. This is a puppet tweak menu. As you can see, it's jam-packed with different options. Thankfully, the setting we want is on the first page. All these settings control Connie's overall movement. We could make Connie run super fast or super slow. But nah, that's not going to help her. A nice high jump is what we need. What do we have here? This slider controls Connie's jump height. Hover over it with your imp and hold X to grab it. Move your imp to adjust the slider to around 3 meters. That should be enough to get over that stack of blocks. The Puppet Tweak menu also has some really useful testing controls. Click R3 to start time, and Connie will come to life. See what happens now if you hover your imp over the jump height slider. You can preview the jump, so you can get it to the perfect height without having to test it in play mode. Actually, I think you should dial it back to 2.5 meters, or she might overshoot the jump. You can make small adjustments to sliders by using the up and down directional buttons. Hover over the slider and use the down directional button to adjust the setting. Feel free to explore some of the other settings in the menu. If you're not sure what a button or slider does, just hover over it for a few seconds and a more info tip will pop up to explain. You can even adjust the strength of gravity on her jump. Turn it down a bit to make her jump more floaty. When you've got Connie's jump the way you want it, give it a test run in play mode. See how far Connie can get now, then move on to the next step when you're ready to continue. Well, that was pretty cool. Unfortunately, Connie's new jumping skills aren't going to be much use on the next obstacle. And don't even think about making her jump over the top, because that force field will zap her in a second. Instead, let's give Connie the power to crouch. I bet she's always dreamed of it. If you're still in play mode, switch back to edit mode now. Rewind time with L3 to put Connie back at the start. To give her a crouch, we need to scope into her. Puppets are made up of sculptures, connectors, and gadgets that are grouped together. Hover over Connie, press and hold L1, then press X to scope in. When you've scoped into a puppet, you can see its inner workings. On Connie's back, there's a microchip gadget. It's called Connie's brain, and it contains all her logic and animations. Let's take a look inside. Hold L1 and press X over it to scope in and open the microchip canvas. There's quite a lot going on in here. The gadget I want you to look at is this one in the bottom right corner with the diamond icon. This is a keyframe gadget. If you've played through the Keyframes and Timelines tutorial, you'll already know all about these. Keyframes record changes to things in the scene. They store those changes in a gadget, which can be triggered using logic. This keyframe contains a crouching pose for Connie. Select the keyframe with X, and you'll see a preview of how it looks. Those dashed lines over Connie show that she's being changed by the keyframe. Press circle to deselect the keyframe, and she goes back to normal. To be able to activate the crouch keyframe, we need to connect it to Connie's controller sensor. Then you'll be able to make her crouch with a controller button. In the next step, I'll show you how to do exactly that. To activate the crouch, we're going to connect it to Connie's controller sensor. If you've closed her microchip, scope back into her and then scope into the microchip to open it up again. The controller sensor is the large gadget on Connie's microchip. It has a controller icon on it. Open up its tweak menu with L1 and square. Now you have a microchip and a tweak menu open, you may need to arrange them on the screen. Make sure that the controller sensor and its tweak menu stay to the left. This is because they generate signals, and signals flow through gadgets from left to right in Dreams. You can also save the 3D space position of tweak menus and microchips, or pin them to the screen, using the buttons that appear at the top when hovering over the canvas. This will help you keep them tidy while you're editing logic, which is very important as it's easy to make mistakes. Now, let's take a closer look at that controller sensor. Ah, look, controller buttons. Just what we need. All playable characters contain a controller sensor gadget like this one. But the gadget can also be used for any situation where you want to detect button presses. To assign our keyframe to a button, we just need to wire it to the controller sensor. We won't use a circle button as that depossesses Connie, and X makes her jump. So how about the square button to crouch? Make sure you can see the keyframe on the microchip. Move the tweak menu with R2 if you need to. If you hover over the square button in the controller sensor menu, you'll see ports appear on either side of it. They're just like the ports you see on gadgets. Ports on the left are inputs, and ports on the right are outputs. Now, you need to be very precise for the next part, as it's easy to make a mistake. Carefully hover your imp over the output port of the square button, and press X to create a wire. Stretch that wire over to the keyframe, and connect it to the power port on the bottom of the gadget with X. If at any time you make a mistake, just undo it using the left directional button. Once your crouch move is all wired up, close the controller sensor tweak menu. Hover over it, hold L1, then press circle to close. Now try out Connie's new crouch in play mode. See if she can make it under the second obstacle. When you're ready to continue, go back to edit mode. Rewind time with L3 and start the next step. Right, we're on to the final obstacle. There's no way around it, but it looks destructible. So we're going to make a slam attack for Connie so that she can smash through it. We'll start by recording a pose for the slam. We can do this using a keyframe. Scope back into Connie and open up her microchip if it isn't already open. If you've played my Keyframes and Timelines tutorial, you'll have a bit of a head start on this next part. Go to the Assembly menu and open the Animate menu. Select the keyframe with X. You'll now have a keyframe gadget on your imp. Stamp it somewhere in the scene with R2 or X. The keyframe records changes you make to objects and settings in the scene. It starts recording as soon as you stamp it. You can tell it's recording because your imp will change shape and colour. Now that we're recording, grab Connie's upper body with R2 and drag it gently down to the floor. Because we're scoped into her, we can move her body parts individually to create a pose. If we weren't scoped in, we'd move Connie's whole body. Notice that her knees automatically bend. Make sure her cone is all the way down to the floor so that you can't see her legs. Keyframes can record changes to anything, even tweak menu settings. So, just for visual flair, let's also make her glow. Hover over Connie's cone, hold L1 and press square to open its tweak menu. Because we're cone is all the way down to the floor so that you can't see her legs. Keyframes can record changes to anything, even tweak menu settings. So, just for visual flair, let's also make her glow. Hover over Connie's cone, hold L1 and press square to open its tweak menu. Because we're scoped in, this opens the tweak menu for the sculpture itself, rather than the puppet. All the settings on this page change the way Connie's cone looks. Look for the glow slider on the first page. Its icon is a sun. Raise the glow up to about 40%. Once you've set the glow, select all the settings on this page change the way Connie's cone looks. Look for the glow slider on the first page. Its icon is a sun. Raise the glow up to about 40%. Once you've set the glow, select Stop Recording in the context menu to store the changes to the keyframe. You can close the tweak menu now too. Just hover over it, hold L1 and press circle. Select the keyframe gadget with X to preview what's been recorded. Looks good. Deselect the keyframe by pressing circle. In the next step, we'll continue building Connie's slam attack. Looks good. Over it, hold L1 and press circle. Select the keyframe gadget with X to preview what's been recorded. Looks good. Deselect the keyframe by pressing circle. In the next step, we'll continue building Connie's slam attack. The next step is to place our new Connie animation into a timeline. Using a timeline will let us time the animations and effects of the slam attack. Go to the Assembly menu and back to the Animate menu. Select the timeline with X. Hover over Connie's microchip and stamp a timeline above the crouch keyframe. Now let's open the timeline canvas with L1 and X. The slam attack should be a really quick X. Connie's microchip and stamp a timeline above the crouch keyframe. Now let's open the timeline canvas with L1 and X. The slam attack should be a really quick animation. So adjust the canvas so it's only 1 second long. Any longer and it won't feel snappy enough. Hover over the edge of the timeline canvas so that a white line appears along it. You'll also see a white double-ended arrow appear next to the edge by your imp. When you see this, grab the edge of the canvas with X. Move your imp to shorten the timeline to 1 second. Make sure you don't select the trim button by mistake. It's a square button by the numbers at the top of the timeline. It has a black arrow on it. The timeline duration is now correct, but the space is very small. So let's zoom in a bit. Hover your imp over the timeline canvas, hold L1 and press the right directional button to zoom in. This will keep the timeline duration to 1 second long, but stretch the space so that you can fit more detail into it. If you need to zoom out, just hold L1 and press the left directional button. Now let's put our slam attack keyframe onto the timeline. Grab the keyframe with R2 and place it at the start of the timeline canvas. Make sure you've got the slam keyframe and not the crouch one. The gadget automatically snaps to the surface of the canvas. The keyframe is only a fraction of a second long at the moment, but we need it to fill the length of the timeline. So hover over the keyframe and hold the up directional button to scale it. Make it the same length as the timeline. Now we want to wire the timeline up to a button press, just like we did with the crouch. Move the timeline directional button to scale it. Make it the same length as the timeline. The keyframe is only a fraction of a second long at the moment, but we need it to fill the length of the timeline. So hover over the keyframe and hold the up directional button to scale it. Make it the same length as the timeline. Now we want to wire the timeline up to a button press, just like we did with the crouch. Move the timeline canvas so that you can see the controller sensor and the timeline gadget. Open the controller sensor tweak menu with L1 and square. I'm going to use L1 as the slam attack button. Hover over the output port of the L1 button and press X to create a wire. Stretch the wire down to the timeline gadget and connect it to the power port on the bottom. You can now use the L1 button to perform Connie's slam attack. Give it a try in play mode. At the moment, it's just an animation, so it's not going to do anything to the blocks. But in the next step, I'll show you how to add some force to it. When you're ready to continue, return to edit mode, rewind time, and start the next step. The slam attack animation is all set up, but it's not doing much besides looking cool, so we need to add a gadget to our timeline that will emit a force when Connie slams the ground. The gadget we're going to use for this is the force applier. Go to the assembly menu and open the gadgets menu. Find the movers and output menu and open it with X. The icon for the force applier looks like a gust of wind. Select it with X to equip it to your imp. I hope you like a gust. Open the gadgets menu. Find the movers and output menu and open it with X. The icon for the force applier looks like a gust of wind. Select it with X to equip it to your imp. I hope you've still got the timeline open. If not, open it with L1 and X. Stamp the force applier onto the timeline canvas below the keyframe. Press circle to unequip the force applier from your imp. The force applier isn't very strong by default, so we'll need to tweak it. To open its tweak menu, hover over the gadget, hold L1 and press square. At the top of the tweak menu is the Force Strength slider. Its icon is a beefy arm. Drag it all the way up to 100% using your imp. That will ensure the force emitted will overcome the gravity in the scene and the friction between the blocks. Next, increase the force speed to 10 meters per second. That will give the slam attack some punch. If you take a look at Connie, you'll see a green zone around her. Anything in this zone will be affected by the force applier. At the moment, the zone isn't much bigger than Connie. Hover your imp over the zone and arrow gizmos will appear. Grab them with R2 and move your imp to change the size of the zone. If you take a look at Connie, you'll see a green zone around her. Anything in this zone will be affected by the force applier. At the moment, the zone isn't much bigger than Connie. Hover your imp over the zone and arrow gizmos will appear. Grab them with R2 and move your imp to change the size of the zone. Or you can scale the zone more precisely in the Force Applier Tweak menu. Go to the tab called Zone Size. Grab the zone size slider with X and set it to about 3.5 meters. Okay, let's test out Connie's new powers. Switch over to Play Mode. Possess Connie and give her new slam attack a try. Oops! Looks like it's more power than Connie can handle. The force applier is pushing her off the platform. Switch back to Edit Mode and rewind time. In the final step, I'll show you how to tweak the force applier so that it only affects the objects we want it to. This tutorial is all about making music. Music can make your creations come alive, adding emotion and atmosphere. In Dreams, you can compose whole tracks from scratch and even make your own instruments. But you don't need to be a maestro to start making your own music. I'll show you how to create an arrangement using ready-made music clips. So let's begin. To start making music, we need to switch over to sound mode. Right now, you're in assembly mode. If you're ever unsure of what mode you're in, just hover over the icon in the top left corner to see your current mode and tool. Go to the Assembly menu and open the Modes menu with X. The Modes menu is where you access all the different creation modes. Each mode has its own set of tools and options. The button for Sound mode has a speaker symbol on it. Select it with X. Now you have a new menu at the top of the screen. This is the Sound menu. It contains everything you need to make your own music. In the scene, you'll see a timeline gadget. In the next step, I'll show you how to edit it. Music in Dreams is arranged in timelines. This timeline contains a version of the music you heard at the start of this tutorial. To see what's inside it, we need to open its canvas. Hover your imp over the timeline, hold L1 and press X to open it. It's just like scoping into a group. This is the timeline canvas. The canvas exists within scene space, so if you pull down on the left stick, you'll back away from it. Hold the L1 button and use the left stick to move up and down the timeline. This is the best way to navigate around timelines, especially when they're big. This piece of music is called Connie's theme. To listen to it, just start time by clicking R3. See how the piece is composed of many music clips. The clips power on and off as the playhead passes over them. Click R3 again to pause time. Each music clip is a collection of notes made by an instrument. You can grab them and move them around with your imp. If you want to delete a music clip, hover over it and press the triangle button. Clips can also be cloned by holding L1 when you grab them. You can extend the timeline by hovering over one of its edges and holding X. The edge glows and an arrow icon appears. You can also extend the bottom if you need space for more clips. Once you've finished listening to the piece, click L3 to rewind time. You can find all sorts of different music by searching the Dreamiverse. To add music to one of your scenes, you could simply stamp a ready-made timeline, like this one. But in this tutorial, you'll learn how to assemble your own track from ready-made music clips. Move on to the next step and we'll get started. So, let's start making music. It's actually a lot easier than you might think. Close the timeline by selecting the cross button in the top right corner. Or hover over it, hold L1 and press circle to close it. Now delete the timeline by hovering over it with your imp and pressing triangle. Let's add a new music timeline to the scene. Press square to open the sound menu. Select the music timeline button in the menu, then stamp one in the scene with R2 or X. Press circle to unequip the timeline gadget from your imp. Open up the timeline canvas with L1 and X. This timeline is empty, ready to be filled with music. The columns on the timeline represent musical bars. This timeline is 8 bars long. We'll need more space than that, so hover over the right edge and grab it with X. Extend the timeline to 16 bars. Now let's add a music clip to the timeline. Press square to open the sound menu. Find the search button and select it with X. Its icon is the magnifying glass. When you search in sound mode, there are 4 options for finding different sounds. Select Search Music Clips with X. This is the Dreamiverse. Here you can find music made by other dream shapers. Well, usually you can, but for this tutorial, I've made a collection of elements for you to use. That's what this cluster is. Select it with X to open it. It contains a selection of music clips, which you can use to build your own arrangements. Use the right stick to zoom in and out, and the left stick to move around. I've grouped the clips into different categories. Let's start with a basic melody. That's this group of clips. Hover over the clips to hear a preview of how they sound. Find one that you like, then select it with X to equip it to your imp. I'm using the clip Nostalgia Bells. Your imp will now be holding a gadget containing your selected clip. If you hover over the timeline, the gadget should snap to the canvas and reveal the whole clip. Place the clip at the start of the timeline and stamp it with R2 or X. Clips on a timeline will snap to the bars and to other clips. This will help you line them up. Click R3 to listen to the timeline. In the next step, we'll build up the track with some more clips. Click L3 to rewind time. Let's build on the melody by adding some chords. Go to the sound menu and select Search Music Clips again. Over here are some chord clips. Hover over the clips to preview them, then select one with X. I'm going with Suspended Pad, but you can make your own choice. Stamp your clip on going with Suspended Pad, but you can make your own choice. Stamp your clip onto a new row of the timeline and snap it to the start. Click R3 to listen and notice how the clips play together in time. Click L3 to rewind. Now let's add some drums. Go back to the sound menu and select Search Music Clips. Find the drum clips in the collection. A drum beat can really change the feel of a track. I love these samba practice drums. Pick a drum clip you like, then stamp it onto the timeline under the melody and chords. Now click R3 to listen to how it sounds. All the clips in the collection are in the same time and key, so you can mix and match them easily. Click L3 to rewind. In the next step, I'll show you how to edit the length of your clips and how to add fades. When you hover over a clip on the timeline, you'll see dotted lines light up at the start and at the end of the clip. Move closer to the timeline so you can see them properly. These are trim handles. We can use them to change the length of a clip. Hover over the handle on the end of the drum clip, then hold R2 to grab it. These clips are loops, so you can extend the clip beyond its original length. All the clips in the collection can be extended in this way. Trim handles are really useful for arranging and remixing. They let you use just a section of a clip without having to edit the music notes inside. On top of the trim handle, you'll see a little coloured gizmo. Move in closer to see it properly. This is a fade handle. You can use it to fade the volume of a clip in or out. It works just like the trim handle. Grab the gizmo with R2 and move your imp left or right to create a fade. Try adding a fade out on the chord clip so it drops off gradually. Drag it out further for a longer fade. Now click R3 to run time. For a longer fade. Now click R3 to run time. Doesn't that sound cool? You may have noticed that the music stops as soon as the playhead reaches the end of the timeline. In the next step, I'll show you how to make your timeline loop. Now click L3 to rewind. To make the track play constantly in the scene, we need to set the timeline to loop. We can do this in the Timeline's Tweak menu. Hover over a blank area of the timeline, hold L1 and press square to open its Tweak menu. In here, we can change the timeline settings. Find the playback mode section. There are three options. Once means a timeline will play once all the way through when it's powered on. Sustain means a timeline will pause when it's powered off, then resume once it's powered on. Loop means a timeline will play repeatedly while it's powered on. Hover over the loop icon and to the left or right to adjust the value. Click R3 to hear your... Now move your imp to the left or right to adjust the value. Click R3 to hear your adjustments live. You can also adjust the slider by hovering over it and pressing the up or down directional buttons. See how it sounds when it's slowed down or sped up a little. To close the tweak menu, hover over it, hold L1 and press circle. You can also tweak music clips to make them loop. Just hover over them, hold L1 and press square to open their tweak menus. You can also change their volume and tempo. Be careful changing the tempo, as your clips could go out of time with the others. We've made a cool piece of music, but you can carry on adding more clips if you want to. Maybe you heard something in a tutorial collection that would sound awesome in your... You can use music clips to make them loop. Just hover over them. To close the tweak menu, hover over it, hold L1 and press circle. You can also tweak music clips to make them loop. Just hover over them, hold L1 and press square to open their tweak menus. You can also change their volume and tempo. Be careful changing the tempo, as your clips could go out of time with the others. We've made a cool piece of music, but you can carry on adding more clips if you want to. Maybe you heard something in a tutorial collection that would sound awesome in your arrangement. Try trimming and looping tracks. See what you can come up with. If you need extra space, you can extend the timeline by grabbing the edges with X. All the clips we've used in this tutorial come from the Media Molecule Music Collection. The collection contains lots of music clips you can use, as well as some complete tracks. Look for it in the Dreamiverse next time you're making music in sound mode. Once you've finished, switch over to play mode and listen to your track in the scene. To end the tutorial, just press Op.
Now to explore the wider world of dream shaping. In a moment, you'll be creating and editing your own scenes in edit mode. Scenes are like levels in a game, or scenes in a movie. They're made up of elements. Elements are like props, sets, music, effects, and characters. Anything that you can build inside a scene and save to the Dreamiverse. Scenes are connected together to form dreams. And these dreams can be found when you go dream surfing.